My deep appreciation of theater history was instilled in me by Tom Empey, a college mentor to me and hundreds of others. While teaching Greek theater terms, he would grab the fabric of his slacks and say, "You see these pants? Euripides Eumenides," making light of content that could be considered rather dry and stuffy while still maintaining respect for the art, which is what I want to do with this podcast. For each episode, I invite a guest from the many paths my theater career has taken me down. I give my guest no idea what we'll be talking about, but they know we're going to find an outrageous story about theater history and perhaps get a better understanding about why we're still doing it after all these years. So welcome to Euripides Eumenides, and I am your host, Aaron Odom.
Apocalypse, apocalypse, I said, why you wanna show up now? Just when the heart of my life was getting good. I'll give you one more chance. Walk on out of the door, yeah. Get your ass to getting where the getting is good.
Good morrow, Eumenidites. This is Aaron Odom from Triton Theater, bringing you another episode of Euripides Eumenides, a theater history podcast. I'm going to jump right into the episode here, as we've got a lot to cover. You'll see in just a moment. But my guest is returning guest Dustin Hebert, who's been on the show several times. He's a high school theater instructor, a professional director, and he is always bringing some great deep insight, some great humor, some great riffing. But I just want to get right into this. So here we go. The Old Price Riots of 1809.
I know, that's the worst introduction. I'm sorry.
That is the equivalent of like building somebody up on like a professional wrestling circuit, and here comes the great Zamboni, and then they walk out there. Hi.
I would like to talk about theater in hello.
Anyway,
Let's get ready to rumble.
Man, I gotta say though, you're still teaching at the high school level. You guys had pretty cool year, it looks like.
Yeah.
Pippin turned out okay.
It really did. And it was, I think it was, anytime you do a show like Pippin with a message, naturally you worry what the audience is going to think. And I tried to make it as poignant as possible using the revival script. I added my own little touches to make sure that the audience got it, because that's the worst part. But really, I did that show so the kids got it. It was way more important for me for the children to understand that Pippin feel like he could be himself. He didn't feel like he had a place, a home. He always felt like something else was out there. Something else meant that he was extraordinary. And I said, guys, to me, you are all extraordinary. You are all extraordinary. And so anytime you feel that, come back. I'm here, come back. Come back. You can, it's okay to land, and it's okay to ground yourself, and it's okay to compromise. Compromising is how we get through life. As far as the spectacle goes, I made sure to add as much as possible. I built I feel bad for the next kid that enters that stage, because I made the leading player come out of the pit on a lip system.
Dude.
Like a rising elevator in homage to the Globe Theater Heaven and Hell.
Yep.
And then I did something special with so in the revival, they have Pippin's proverbial son come back on stage, and he started to sing Pippin's theme. So the son picked up an iPad and started focusing down at the iPad. And then the players came in. The idea that social media, that this connection to electronics and the digital world keeps us from grounding ourselves. I think the audiences got it. It was really weird during the rehearsal process, because we were talking and we stopped and had questions at the end. The first thing the kid asked at the end of the show, when we just did the ending and all these kids are sitting around staring at this kid, the first thing he asked is, can he put some games on this iPad for him to play while he's staring at it for 30 seconds?
So you're sure they got it?
Yeah, because his mom was in the audience and she was embarrassed. She was embarrassed. I think the kids got it, and it's a hard piece to do for high schoolers,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
especially with like 60. I think we had 68 on that stage.
Good God. Good God.
Which I thought when I do shows that are like Pippin, less kids would come out, but turns out the kids are really attracted to the dark musicals. Who knew?
Who knew? Well, and it also, I mean, I've been watching the progress of your program over the years, and I think it seems the word is getting out that it's quality stuff. There's a lot of people who I feel get into theater because no one else accepts them anywhere.
Sure, I completely believe that.
They gotta feel like they belong somewhere.
Yep.
Which is an absolutely wonderful thing. So kudos to you to getting 68 kids just to be on stage. And that's not musicians in the pit. That's not technicians. That's
That's
God.
just that's just the chorus and the leads.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So way to go. I see you on video right here, and you still have a gorgeous head of hair. I don't know how that happens with a show like that.
Oh no, I'm coloring it now because it's a hard silver line through here. And
but it's thick and full, and I'm sorry, I'm jealous. Okay. Well, so Dustin, thank you for getting on the program again. I love the success that you have, and I love having you on the show. Gosh, I think this is like 4 or 5 times now. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
I'm thrilled with it. Absolutely thrilled.
All right. Well, I brought you here for a reason. And I did ask you the question here to think about, and we talked about it a little bit, but I went, keep your stuff for the show. I'm interested to hear what you say. But question I have for you for today's episode is, what is your favorite protest or form of protest?
Absolutely. Topless protest. Big fan of topless anything. Anytime a person can be topless and protest something, I'll listen. I'll pay attention. Guys, girls, doesn't matter. I'll take it all. If you're not wearing a shirt, I will listen to you.
Paint, pasties, I don't care. You know what? Free it.
Biden's and Trump's next debate should absolutely be topless, because that would at least be hilarious as well as incredibly entertaining.
And they each get paintball guns. I'm so down.
If you talk, you get shot in the chest with a paintball if you don't pay attention to what you're supposed to be talking about. Anyways.
Okay, protest.
So, not to take the stereotypical theater teacher line, but I actually feel like Gandhi's approach, the approach for the civil rights movement, sit-ins, nonviolent protests, is probably the most effective. It is not the most entertaining. And as the news would sort out, I think it's overlooked quite a bit. The reason I like nonviolent protest is if you're trying to do something, but you do something negative to the public eye, like break a window, riot, do something there, then you lose credibility. You lose rational thought and credibility. And nonviolent protest exists with this idea that I'm not doing anything to you. I'm just existing because I want to say something. I really want to say something. The most recent form of nonviolent protest was Colin Kaepernick.
Oh, hey, yeah.
But the message was lost because he chose an emotional moment to protest in. And people didn't see the protest. They saw him protesting the troops. And, we've had that problem since Vietnam, where people attach personal qualities to the overall message. My brother is fighting in Iraq. You can't do that. What are you saying? All American? No, I'm not saying that. It's about police brutality. It's about unfairness and inequity in the African-American culture. It's about the idea that we've, because they were so far behind when it came to acquiring what is perceived as capitalistic gains, that there is an inequity, and we should probably pay attention to it.
Well, and the funny thing about that is, when a protest happens, I I see too often that the people opposed to it haven't asked themselves the question that the protester is asking. You know, Colin Kaepernick takes a knee during the national anthem, and it's about racial inequality and suppression of the African American community. They never said, "I wonder if that's true," and look into it.
Yeah.
Because because legitimately if they look into it and then still come out of it going, I don't agree. At least you looked into it.
At least you tried to build a sympathy or empathetic bridge. Like just take a look. But
yeah,
unfortunately, he was not.
No. I actually, I've gotten my younger son interested in professional sports. Like he is really excited about the NBA playoffs right now, but I had to actually explain to him the other day what streaking was.
Oh,
and
there's a movie for that.
I know.
Just old school. Just have him watch old school.
Yeah. But, it came up like a lot of people just do it for attention. He's like, I don't understand that. I'm like, I don't really either, son. But I'm like, but sometimes there will be a reason. Like, I'm streaking for lower dairy prices. I don't know. I'm just coming up with something. But
speaking of it, we're going to just circle around this topless concept.
Absolutely.
The lower dairy prices. Bring out the teats. Rated teats.
Well, okay. So that's fantastic. And I totally agree. Actually, as I was thinking about it, as you were talking about it, I was thinking of that monk in the Vietnam War who like sat in like a street and set himself on fire and died. And you're like, okay, that is a powerful form of protest that you can do once.
Don't get a repeat on that one. It requires such a strong ethos in that ideology to be able to do that.
Right. This kind of reminds me of that Porky Pig cartoon where he was a talent agent. And the last act was, I think it was like a fox or something who comes in and he's like, I got the most amazing trick. And he drinks like poison and nitroglycerin and several other things, and then drops a lit match in his mouth and explodes. And, it's a Looney Tunes thing. So there's an explosion and then there's just charred carpet below.
Ash carpet, right?
There's no guts or anything anywhere. And Porky Pig just goes, wow, that's sensational. That was amazing. The fox's ghost comes through the talent door and he goes, but there's a problem with the act. See, I can only do it once.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Well, anyway, here we go. At the beginning of the 1800s, theater was an incredibly popular form of entertainment. Some sources suggest that water cooler talk in the Georgian age would be all about different performances of classic plays, much as we talk about players in major sporting events today. Like, did you catch the game last night? I mean, the water cooler talk could be like, man, did you see Richard Brinsley Sheridan?
Right. Because that's their form of entertainment at that time period, which was, carried on. Now, and of course, it depends on like where you're talking about. Russia had some stuff going on in the 1800s that was fantastic.
Yep.
Just a skosh. Thanks, socialized theater. Italy, not so much. Maybe just a dabble, dip a toe in. But obviously, America. Had it moved to the American shores at that point, or were we still just doing vaudeville and blackface? And was that still mostly just showgirls?
I think mostly it was like musical reviews, and sometimes you might have some operas or ballets. But yeah, theater hadn't exploded here yet. It doesn't until about the 1900s. But where we're talking about specifically is the UK.
Okay.
Now, as you may recall from previous episodes, there were only 2 patent houses in England at the beginning of the 1800s, and this is where legitimate spoken word theater could be seen only in these 2 places. And that was Theatre Royal Covent Garden and Theatre Royal Drury Lane, both in London. So if you wanted to see actual spoken word dramas or any kind of plays at all, you could only go 2 places in England at the time.
Creating with only 2 spaces, they were pretty packed most of the time.
Yep.
I mean, we didn't have soccer. We didn't have, or as they would say, football, which they called soccer first, but whatever. They didn't have hockey. Hockey wasn't big fan there.
Cricket.
They didn't have cricket.
Well, I might be wrong on that. I don't know. But, I mean,
yeah, you have these two big houses, but smaller houses did exist all over England. People went to see shows, but those smaller houses couldn't do legitimate theater. Offerings were mainly spectacle, musical, or comedic, but nothing too influential. So I think I saw in some of my research that a lot of them were just like rhymed songs that maybe told a story, but they couldn't pop up there and do Hamlet or something like that.
No.
No.
Which is funny because that should have been, that's kind of in their wheelhouse.
You'd think.
You'd think.
Uh-huh. Now, theater performances at patent houses didn't just include plays. High wire acts, songs by famous artists.
You gotta get that spectacle.
Yeah. And then you might have a short comedy all at the end, but your main event is like a big play, a full-length play. Usually a patron was at the theater from 6:30 p.m. to 12 a.m.
So it was a cycle play. So it was that Festival of Dionysus sort of situation where they would like line them up and be like, "You're in it for the long haul, buddy."
Well, it was more like you'd have an entire bill of fare, and some of the acts were smaller, but your main event, your title card, was King Lear. And then you'd also have maybe a violinist come and do, something that's well-known and famous. And so you'd be getting a lot of value for your ticket. Now, often patrons could get half-price tickets during the interval if the house wasn't full. But even at that, they'd still be getting a lot for their ticket. And there were some days each week that would only offer half-price tickets. So they're cranking people in and giving them a lot for their dollar or for their ticket price. Their pound, I guess.
You get a lot of action. I mean, really and truly, it's like back-to-back Angels in America, only with a comedy in between the two. And maybe a short skit about the ridiculousness of the world. So yeah, no, I think that we should go back to that.
Between the two Angels in America, we're just going to read this script from an episode of Seinfeld.
Just ruins the mood.
Like, oh, that was fun how they were all mean to each other. Now back to AIDS.
Nope, that's but there was nothing else to do, and that's how diseases get spread, is through 6 hours in a theater.
Now, in the early morning hours on September 20th, 1808, a fire broke out in Covent Garden. Due to water pipe construction nearby, no running water could get to the building for 4 hours.
Wow.
And within that time, the fire completely leveled Covent Garden to the ground, as well as several surrounding buildings. While the accounting books and cash were all preserved, most likely because they were in a safe, here's a description of the result of the fire. The conflagration claimed the lives of 22 people. The fire destroyed all of the theater's material assets, elaborate sets, props, decorations, costumes, jewelry, dramatic scripts, and musical scores, including original compositions of George Friedrich Handel and Thomas Arne.
That's terrible. That's terrible. I mean, to be fair, like back in the time period where they had horse-drawn fire wagons, right? Right. Was the best they could do was like a bucket brigade and just doing their best to luck.
Have 140 people in a line down to the River Thames to
just washing that fire over. That's rough. So many cool things were destroyed there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and speaking of Handel and cool things, also lost in the fire was a pipe organ that Handel used in Covent Garden for performances in the 1730s and 40s. Ooh.
Rough. That sucks.
Well, thus, with the destruction of Covent Garden, there was only one place to see legitimate theater, Drury Lane.
Right.
During the evening of February 24th, 1809, Drury Lane burned to the ground.
Because, was it just some guy in the front row, same guy, just smoking his pipe? He's just chucking his matches.
Yeah.
Just like throwing them.
Yeah.
Carpet, whatever, it'll go out.
The ushers are coming by and, sir, I need you to extinguish your pipe. And he's like, extinguish my pipe! Now, the descriptions of the Drury Lane fire were just actually quite poetic. It sounded like an absolutely huge fire. It was completely relentless, and the flames reached really high into the sky. Like, people came from miles just to watch the building burn because it was such a spectacle. At one point,
someone watching the fire was crushed by one of the walls of the building falling on him.
Situational awareness was not.
standing at the foot of the wall, looking up, going, "God damn, that's a big fire!" Splat.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Now, the companies who occupied both spaces were taken up by smaller theaters. The Covent Garden Company performed in King's Theatre, while the Drury Lane Company found a home at the Lyceum Theatre. The financial impact to the companies was quite devastating. Neither new house could compete with the audience size of the burned down theaters, so ticket income was considerably less.
Right.
Plus, the insurance policies on both buildings hardly covered the cost of constructing completely new structures. And to add on even more, the managers of both companies had incurred significant debts prior to each fire.
Do you think they had act of God clauses like we do now? Like, oh well, listen, that fire was clearly due to ground movement, so we're not going to cover shit.
No, they're actually. I would imagine there's something like that, because they did actually get some return, but it was nowhere near what it was going to cost to put something out.
Oh no.
However, John Philip Kemble, the actor manager of the Covent Garden Company, was quite well connected. He reached out to many of his wealthy patrons to help rebuild the theater. One such was the Duke of Northumberland, who offered a bond for £10,000.
Sure.
No small chunk of change here. Mm-hmm.
That's huge. That's huge.
In 1808. And later,
right,
the Duke would just tell Kemble that he didn't need to pay that back.
That was very nice of him.
There's your angel that you make a plaque for and put in
right,
the lobby, right?
Angel donor. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In addition, not even 6 days after the destruction of Covent Garden, the company opened at King's Theatre. And during the performance, Kemble addressed the audience directly and announced that he planned to rebuild Covent Garden within the year.
Do you think the guy got a say in what the theater produced after that point?
Oh, yeah.
You know how donors nowadays, they're like, here's $2,000, but we want to see Music Man. Or listen, do Wicked. I don't care if it's not been released. Do Wicked.
And only Wicked.
And only Wicked. We need to see Beauty and the Beast, or we're pulling our funds. Like I've already seen donors do that. Like that's a cool move.
Yeah. No, I think they trusted these actor managers enough. I did a whole episode a few times ago about the actor managers, that they just got full reign. Like
awesome.
They got the trust that you're going to put together an amazing season for us and we're going to do great. It also was fairly commercial, and being only one of two places that could produce legitimate theater, well, you're going to do things that everybody wants to go to.
Right.
But at that time, it wasn't kind of like you're suggesting, very family-friendly fare, where it's a generalized thing. Like everybody would go see Shakespeare. Everybody would go see Christopher Marlowe. Everybody would go see, I don't know that by the 1800s, I think they'd kind of toddled off by doing some of the more prurient stuff that they do in the Restoration. But, comedies were still there. But during this opening night performance, 6 days after the fire, Kemble addressed the audience directly and announced he planned to rebuild Covent Garden within a year. As a result of these opening performances, Kemble was able to raise another £50,000.
Whoa, a year? Well, that's how he's going to do it.
Yeah, at shares of 500 per share, something like that. So he got at least 100 people to put down $500 per share. Not bad. Yeah. But evidently, combined with the insurance payout he'd be getting, the cost of the planned construction would be, at that time, £150,000.
Yeah.
Now, this would be a little under 11 million pounds today, which in 2024 US dollars would be just under 13 million. I'm like, okay, that sounds reasonable for a structure of that magnitude, Sure,
absolutely. And this is encroaching on it's not quite there, but it's encroaching on the Gilded Age. So everything's ornate, everything's beautiful. It's not a barn in the middle of a barren wasteland with some curtains wishing you the best of luck. You know what I mean? It's not like that. This is nice. This is everything's steel,
bronze and brass, and yes,
right. But no fire protection.
No fire protection. In fact, we soaked the curtains in gasoline. It really makes them glow.
No fire protection.
No fire protection.
No.
Now, as an architect for the building, Kemble appointed Robert Smirke, Smirke, who envisioned the entrance of the new building to resemble the Temple of Athena in the Acropolis in Athens. Okay. At the time of its
throwback there, I
construction,
like that.
At the time of its construction, the 4 columns of the entrance were the second widest in Europe, as in thickness.
Wow. That's huge.
That's huge.
I mean, did they add the French flying buttresses to it as well? I mean,
well, I'll get into that here. Now, here's some info on the inside. I'm going to send you a picture here in just a second. Virtually everything was upholstered in red velvet, and a statue of Shakespeare was featured prominently. So here, let me get you a little shot of this while I describe it to our listeners. Here's a quote I found on the interior.
Oh, my God.
Right? The auditorium of the new theater featured a number of improvements, including additional space in the pit, which is where the lower ticket prices were, or like the medium ticket prices. The conversion of the 3rd tier into a series of private luxury boxes, each with its own anteroom, and the transformation of the upper gallery into a series of arched openings or pigeonholes beneath the roof. And that's where the lowest ticket prices were.
Yeah.
So
I see those. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Now, Kemble's intention with this new design was to make the building a little bit more attractive to a wealthier crowd, even though theater was enjoyed by all members of all classes at this time. So I'm going to divert off here just a little bit, and let's talk about the British economy. God, this is a fun show.
In the 1800s? If by British you mean the East India Trading Company, yeah.
Yeah. Following the American Revolutionary War, the British government found itself deeply in debt, and now without a major source of commerce, as the colonies are now. Yeah. So the colonies are now a new country and not directly feeding into British coffers. Thus, taxes had to be raised across the British Empire. But by 1785, trade had resumed with the U.S., almost to the point that it was at before the war. And by the early 1800s, Britain was almost to a point to be in the black.
So did they lower taxes? Why would they? Here's a clipping from an article I found. Additionally, while Britain gained an even larger national debt, it was in a position to live with it, and there were no financially motivated rebellions like those in France. Indeed, Britain was able to support several armies during the Napoleonic Wars and field its own instead of paying for other people. It's been said that Britain actually prospered from losing the war. Unlike Germany.
No,
Britain did really well.
A little bit. However, things were not too pleasant in Ireland. Somewhat inspired by the American Revolution, political movements began to grow in Irish Parliament that indicated they might want to seek their independence from Britain as well. So, fearing another political revolution, Britain eased trade restrictions on Ireland and managed to quell a new rebellion. But revolution still remained in the minds of those in power. There were actually plenty of things that could incite a rebellion in England at the time, so the threat was fairly present. Now, back to theater. If you listen to my episode on box seats, you may understand the distinct separation between patrons who could afford seats in the pit, what we kind of know today as the orchestra, down on the floor,
right,
and those who could afford private boxes, which obviously cost more. If nothing else, it was simply a reminder of the haves and the have-nots.
Absolutely. And that dates back, that was the Globe's first perception, was that the people that are sitting up are there to be seen, not necessarily to watch the show. Really, the best seats are in the orchestra. Like they're the groundling seats. Those are the best seats for most shows now. But if you want to be seen, you go sky high.
Right. But of course, in the Globe and in outdoor theaters in the Renaissance, the pit was standing room only. So
right.
You're standing for the entire 5 hours of King Lear.
I wonder if Shakespeare had a guy who was like, we should cut this down. We got to get under 2.5, bud. Like we've got to snip this. People have places to go, things to do.
And that's when Shakespeare plops down another 45 pages and goes, "This is Act 4. I'll be back with Act 5 tomorrow." So, to sum up, the British economy was doing well. Taxes remained high. In the theater world, demand remained high and could not be met. The reconstruction of Covent Garden was highly anticipated, as Drury Lane's reconstruction would still be years away. Opening night was announced as September 18th, 1809. It's my birthday. Although, 170 years earlier. But September 18th, keeping with Kimball's promise that the theater would open within a year, and it did, 2 days before the anniversary of the Covent Garden fire. Kept a promise.
I know, and that's really impressive.
2 days.
That's really impressive. 2 days, just like 48 hours, go!
Just fill in that hole with hay. I don't care. Will it burn? Shut up.
Listen, it really is a testament to the things that people will do before opening night. Like how hard people will work before opening night. We open in 12 hours.
But my shoes don't match.
I don't care. Go paint them black.
Now, as usual, Kimball being the actor-manager of the troupe, he would also be the lead actor for all shows. His sister, the famous actor Sarah Siddons, would be playing the female lead opposite him.
Fantastic traditions that we still maintain. There was no way that Dear Evan Hansen had that at all with the lead actor that played Dear Evan Hansen was not related to the producer.
I mean, that voice is still pretty impressive, though, Dustin.
I'm not disagreeing.
It's just
the voices out there, but very few of them have fathers that were also producers. And hey, Ben did great. Great.
There's a callback to one of our episodes that you've been on. Hello, Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah.
My daddy's a producer.
Looks like he's perfect for the role. There's a check attached to this headshot. Looks like he's in.
Yeah, Daniel's done well. Anyway.
A lot of zeros on that resume there, Daniel.
Back to opening night at the new Covent Garden. The opening night main event offering would be Shakespeare's The Scottish Play. And I'm going to say that way now because of what comes later. But I'm still like a man and his sister were playing M and Lady M.
Sure. That's weird. I bet they didn't have intimacy coaches back then.
Well, and she was married. Yeah. And that husband sitting there in the wings going, look at my wife kissing her brother.
I'm so proud. This is going to make for a really weird Thanksgiving. Oh, wait, they don't celebrate Thanksgiving. Christmas is going to be weird.
Was the tongue necessary? Yeah.
Kissing for quite a while.
Now, in addition to that show being the main event, Kimball contracted and promoted that the famous Italian soprano Angelica Catalani would perform as a nightly offering, and she did not come cheaply. That fact was well known to the public.
There's a lot of money in those sopranos.
Damn right. Thousands flocked to the streets to get tickets on opening night. Because as far as I understand, there wasn't a system of like reserving your ticket. You just showed up.
No, you're way off. I think Ticketmaster was back then.
Oh yeah.
I think that's where they started their they got a foothold in the tickets, and people would buy the tickets and then immediately scalp them.
And that
some money.
That's exactly when the Department of Justice started their case into Ticketmaster. Yeah.
Yeah, this is 175. No, I'm sorry, almost 200 years. 223 years. Yeah, that's about right.
I think we finally got something.
Justice is a dish that's best served long.
So thousands are in the streets wanting to get in, but the new theater seated just under 3,000. So many were turned away.
Right. Yeah, that's huge.
But that still does make a huge demand. Like if it gets sold out, people are like, well, I'll be there tomorrow. You guarantee that.
Right. Standing in line, waiting for people not to show up. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I get that.
When patrons got inside, the theater they remembered was honored in many architectural ways. I mean, you saw it. You saw the picture.
Yeah.
So for my listeners, Covent Garden kept the basic idea of its seating area, which was set up much like an opera house. There's a large pit of benches on the floor and rows of boxes and galleries surrounding the pit. And in the case of Covent Garden, there were 3 tiers worth of boxes and galleries. However, those who did attend on opening night were met with something of a nasty surprise at the box office, even though it was announced in newsprint on September 14th, 4 days earlier. Here's the quote.
6 shillings prices rose to 7 for the boxes. 3 shillings and 6 pence prices for the pit rose to 4 shillings, and a third section, usually available to the public, was converted into private boxes with an annual rent of £300 a year.
Whoa.
Yeah. The gallery price remained the same, but had very poor views of the actors, as much of the gallery had been reduced. So I want to try to put this in perspective just a bit for us,
Okay.
223 years later.
Yeah.
6 shillings prices rose to 7 for the boxes. So in British currency, that's £15.43. In American dollars, that's $19.54. Okay.
Yeah.
It's my understanding, though, at that time, this was the equivalent of 2 days of wages for a skilled tradesman.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's put that in perspective a little bit more. You can go see a Broadway show and get an okay ticket for $150 to $200.
Sure.
So this absolutely makes sense to me, right?
Yeah.
But if they all of a sudden raise that from 200 to 300, okay.
Yeah. Your ticket line. I mean, that's a huge economical burden. I mean,
Yep.
just to see art that's insane. I already think Broadway prices are stupid, but like,
who doesn't?
well, I mean, the touring prices are not that much better. The tour of company is $250 if I want to go see it. If I want to go into the space, it's $250.
Yeah, I'm looking at seeing a show in Denver this summer, and I can't find them. Nothing against the Buell Theater, but hey, their balconies, like, I'm looking at my feet when I'm looking at the stage. Basically, that's the rake of it. I'd just rather get something on the floor. But that's $150. That's still $150 to $175.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
Now, the 3 shillings and 6 pence prices for the pit that rose to 4 shillings in British currency today. That's £8.81. American dollars, $11.16. That's about 1 day of wages for a skilled tradesman. And the new private boxes at £300 a year, in modern money, that's £13,221.87. In American dollars, that's $16,744.82. But that's your season ticket.
Yeah, but this is still interesting. This is like almost reverse classism. Like, that's really expensive. Like, that's way more than box seats at a regional theater like the Buell or like the Capitol in Chicago or the Capitol in Salt Lake City, or probably somewhere else has got the Capitol, Atlanta. But like, there's a lot of Capitol theaters, not DC. But I mean, there's a lot of really expensive. Like that's unobtainably expensive.
But again, like I said, that's your box. That is your box only for £300 a year. So anytime you want to come, it's there.
Sure.
And I would imagine if you're not there, then they would sell it. But I don't know.
Oh, I absolutely would do that.
Oh, and here's the equivalent of what £300 a year would be. That's the equivalent of 2,000 days of wages for a skilled tradesman.
What are you doing? I'm saving up for those box seats
for the next 7 years.
7-to-1 ratio. 7 years of work for 1 year of box seats.
You better like the theater, Marjorie.
That's if they don't die.
Right.
Between consumption and random VDs, like you're lucky to live that long.
Theater walls falling on you while you're gawking at a fire.
I had a nickel for every time.
Oh, now check out these private boxes. This is great. Many of these private boxes also had curtains that could be drawn so that the patrons inside the boxes could, air quotes, protect themselves from being seen by anyone.
Of course, because.
Yeah, because. This drew a little ire as patrons who could not afford them were looked down upon by those who could, claiming that they did not appreciate the lower classes' potential for engaging in prostitution in the theater, when that's probably what was happening in the boxes behind closed curtains.
They went to a theater, right? Like that's, I mean, not to be crazy, but I'm pretty sure it was Shakespearean time when the theaters were built around the red light district.
Yeah. Well, they couldn't be built in the city because that was a law.
Right. So they were on the south side of the Thames at that time,
Mhm.
over it's like Kingsbury Bridge.
Sure.
Um, sure, but I think I think it's I really do feel like it's a tradition to involve
Mhm.
some sort of prostitution when it comes to
Oh,
theater.
well, when I've talked about him so many times. Like, I think King Charles II should just be a sponsor of my show at this point. But he was bringing his girls all the time, and all of his
Oh
friends were bringing all their mistresses. You knew that, like, several of the actors who became famous women on the stage started out as prostitutes. So,
what?
yeah,
They're going together? That's crazy.
unbelievable. So it is funny to think of, I'm gonna just come up with the name, Lord Baron Mortimer Highcroft, sitting up in his box and looking down on those people in the pit, and then going, I can't believe them down there with all their sinful ways. Oh, the show is starting. Jennifer, get up out of my lap.
Yeah. Oh, time to go. Hop up.
Now, while gallery prices remain the same, remember they were constructed to be pigeonholes. It's kind of difficult to describe.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like it is a balcony, and there are several rows of raked seating, but they put these arches over the balcony. For audiences today, this is kind of what we would consider your nosebleed seats. Okay.
Gonna say it's like being put in front of a pole, like a structural pole to watch a
Uh-huh.
baseball game.
Yep.
Right? Like,
Exactly.
cool. I'm glad I'm
Uh-huh.
leaning to my right and left for everything.
So evidently the galleries were built at such an angle that some of the seats could only see the bottom half of the legs of the actors. And I'm going to send you a picture of a political cartoon of it. I'm very interested to see what you have to say about it, but that's kind of what the galleries apparently looked like.
Oh my God. For our listeners, it's just, I can smell this picture. I can really like smell just some stink. And I there's a guy on the left. I can't tell if he's vomiting.
Yeah, or if it's just a vast amount of snot raining out his nose.
Just some post nasal. It's probably consumption. Everything, remember, everything was called consumption back then.
Right.
Everything was consumption. What are you dying from? He lost his leg. No, it's consumption.
And there's got to be like 100 faces in this thing.
All kind of shaped very piggish. I mean, I wonder what the political cartoon was trying to exemplify that.
Oh, yeah. I would imagine they were trying to say what maybe the upper classes thought of these
Correct.
people in this pigeonhole. I mean, there's one woman in the front who I'm not sure she has a dress on.
Oh no, it's not a dress. That's something.
It's a hospital gown turned front.
She's just doing her best to do something there. Now,
Yeah.
were the newspapers run by the upper class and elite like they were in America in the 20th century?
I think they might have had a little bit more journalistic integrity and editorializing, as you'll find out here in just a bit. So, with all this raise in ticket prices, needless to say, the patrons who made it into the theater were not pleased. After a chorus of the national anthem was sung, the crowd took their seats. John Philip Kemble strolled onto the stage as himself
Sure.
to deliver a grand poem commemorating the new space and to ask slyly for further donations. Here's the end of his speech, Dustin. We feel with glory all to Britain due, and British artists raise this pile for you to guard the staple genius of our land. Solid our building, heavy our expense. We rest our claim on your munificence. What ardor plans a nation's taste to raise, a nation's liberality repays.
Boy, I've heard some speeches in my time. That's pure pathos. That's pure pathos.
I mean, every time you go to church and they go, and we're going to pass around the collection plate, you're still just like, come.
Golden Cross. I mean, yeah. I mean, in for a penny, in for a pound. That's sort of it. You're in there, so they're going to try to milk every last cent out of you.
Mm-hmm. But I do love that I got to use the word munificence.
I'm going to start using that more, I think.
Mm-hmm. It just basically means generosity.
Yeah.
We appreciate your munificence with your applause tonight at the theater.
I absolutely believe that would ostracize my population, though. Munificence is far too many syllables for thank you.
It sounds evil.
Did he say Maleficent? Are they doing Sleeping Beauty? Oh, Jesus.
I love Angelina. But Dustin, no one really heard this speech because as soon as Kemble could be seen on the stage, he was met with an absolute uproar from the audience. Here's a quote from the Times from September 19th, 1809, the day after. "We did not believe a single word was heard by the most acute listener in the house. Hisses, groans, yells, screeches, barks, coughs, shouts, cries of 'off, lower the prices, 6 shillings, pickpockets, imposition, cut purse,' etc., served to vary, but nothing could add to the clamor, which was always at its highest when Mr. Kemble was there."
You know, the sad part is I mean, great timing on your part, but this is going to probably get edited through and maybe come out in a week or so, and the news media will already have moved past Donald Trump's presentation at the Libertarian Party that absolutely verbally chastised and roasted him as he's trying to talk to a group of people. So if it's anything like that, met with booze and rubber chickens, those screaming ones, the screaming rubber chickens, they smuggled those in. Booze, shouts with a big sign behind him that says, disrupt the government or something like that. Be ungovernable. That's it. It's it wouldn't surprise me one bit. That's a rough. I believe that's where the phrase "that was a rough crowd."
Jeez, tough audience. Throughout the night, the patrons cheered, booed, and spoke over everything that was put on stage that night. But they never got violent, just infinitely distracting. At some point, Kemble called for the police. When they got there, they literally read the crowd the riot act. Now, do you know about this?
No, I don't. I've heard the phrase, but no, that phrase has never been explained to me.
This is fantastic. So in case you didn't know, this is an actual prepared speech, very similar to like the Miranda rights being read before, while you're being arrested.
I have no idea what those are.
I've never heard them myself. I may have had to learn them for a part once. Anyway, the Riot Act was introduced to Parliament in 1714 in reaction to a lot of protests happening, and they were causing quite a problem. It was passed into law in 1715. Here's what would happen when this law needed to be invoked. A police officer or another agent of the state would stroll to a crowd of 12 or more, because that's specified in the law, it has to be 12 or more, and read the following aloud. Our sovereign lord, the king, chargeth and commandeth all persons, being assembled, immediately to disperse themselves and peaceably to depart to their habitations or to their lawful business upon the pains contained in the act made in the first year of King George for preventing tumults and riotous assemblies. God save the king.
I have a question.
I just read you the Riot Act.
Yeah, I know. And I feel diminished. And very, very much, I almost want to leave the podcast because of the Riot Act.
But you have a question.
Do you feel like the riotous uproar was coming from those cheaper seats or the pigeonholes, or was it the box seats that the upper class were able to procure?
From what I understand, it was all of them.
So only the upper class probably understood.
They're there to see Shakespeare. I mean,
there is a lot of syllables in that riot.
If they let Kemble actually speak, they might have heard what he was going to say and understood it in their munificence.
That's I firmly, at that moment in time when somebody hears the Riot Act being said, I believe firmly that they go, that guy had a lot of words. I'm going to disperse and go look him up.
That's it. That's the intent. I got some words written down on my hand here. We'll go look those up. Sovereignty. What the hell is sovereignty?
Sovereignty. Remember, we are both from a state that still pronounces the theater. So I think it's really important to note that, like, though that probably wouldn't work.
So I'm going to tell you something really, really surprising here. So the police got out there, read the riot act. The audience didn't budge.
No kidding.
Yeah. Instead, they responded thusly. The audience retaliated by increasing their noise and shouting, "No magistrates! No police in a theater!" At this point, the police didn't start rounding up rowdy patrons and throw them in paddy wagons. I can just see the one officer who read the riot act look over to his superior officer and go, "It didn't work."
No, guys, I was told this was going to work.
They're not moving or leaving at all. So at this point, there was actually no unified state police. So it was basically small local groups of peace officers.
There was no governmental organization for fire and police. They were both like, I mean, you want to use the term small militias, but like they were.
Yep.
And how many people? 3,000, right?
Just under 3,000. Yeah. In any case, the police now found themselves in a bit of a quandary with the audience who did not wish to comply with the riot act. The police actually started to debate amongst themselves, could they actually arrest these people if they paid for a ticket to be here?
Right. Can we remove them if they've paid successfully to be here?
Yeah.
I guess there was no etiquette law at that point in time, right? It was just on, the expectations of the social expectations of behavior. And as soon as those social expectations didn't exist, then there's no law against shenanigans and tomfoolery.
So the police deliberated for a while the show went on, and the audience continued its chaos. And eventually the police decided they couldn't really do anything. Only a few protesters were actually removed and left. And then the police left too.
Right.
And when the police left, the audience responded by singing rousing versions of "God Save the King" and "Rule Britannia."
Right. Because that's something to, align the masses, right? Something that everybody knows.
Right.
It's like starting the Pledge of Allegiance in a crowd. Everybody kind of just joins in, and you're just I guess like right.
Didn't take off my hat. Shit. Eventually, around 2 a.m., the audience got tired and went home.
5 hours longer than I would.
Kemble was just beside himself. This was the beginning of what has come to be known as the Old Price Riots. The next night was almost completely a repeat of the opening night, minus the police presence.
So people are still paying, right?
Yes.
Is what it is, I guess. But
yeah.
Maybe the performers might have gotten mad, but the guy's like, "Oh, you paid to be here, so I guess, keep your pants on and try to not be violent."
Yeah, and the performers were still getting contractually paid, so they're fine.
Yeah,
they get out there. It's just hard when, you're trying to say out damn spot and somebody is saying it along with you as you're going on.
In a modern day, it'd be like, "Oh, good, I'm on vocal rest. I'm on vocal rest. Everyone, vocal rest. Vocal rest. I'm on vocal rest."
Oh, yeah. So like you said, the audience paid for their ticket. They marched into the theater and raised an absolute cacophony in the house while the evening's entertainment went on. On the third night of protests, Kemble actually tried to address the audience again. This time, they listened a little bit better, as Kemble explained that the prices are relatively the same as they were 100 years prior, and that the cost of the new building was around £150,000, and that the British audience deserved such a splendid place to see theater. And while he was initially greeted with some applause, the audience just went right back to jeering and sneering.
Yeah.
Dustin, this went on for 67 days.
Wow. Packed houses.
Packed houses every night. Every night the show's going on. Everybody in the house is doing whatever they can to be distracting, demanding that prices be lower.
Oh, what you're telling me is this. Vince McMahon got his idea through this process of letting people just be, and he still sold tickets. So maybe people started to come just to see the riots.
Maybe. Oh, Dustin, it gets so much better. Let me tell you a little bit more about these protesters. The protesters, now calling themselves the OP or OPs for old prices, seemed to be thoroughly enjoying their time protesting. Here's a quote. Day after day, week after week, from September through December, protesters made noise, brandished placards, fashioned OP medals and faux money, created signature OP songs, and even performed an OP dance.
Huh. Show around the protest.
Uh-huh. I mean, it's a whole culture around it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And some people woke up in the morning and went, you know what? I want to do that again. That was kind of fun.
That was really fun. I can't believe how much fun I had at the theater.
Right. Absolutely. Audience participation at its finest.
Tina and Tony's wedding ain't got nothing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, talk about an immersion theatrical event. Like you've got people puking from the pigeonholes, and you've got curtains drawn. You can come see anything. I think that's where they, it's bawdy and naughty. And I think it's perfect.
Mm-hmm. One medal that they had made that I saw was the figure of John Bull, who is kind of like Britain's Uncle Sam, riding a donkey who bore the face of John Philip Kemble.
Yeah.
Above them was the inscription, from N to O, Jack, you must go. So from new to old, Jack, you must go.
This is indicative of like, God, I believe McDonald's prices are so high. Yeah, I'll take 2 hamburgers and I'll supersize it. Like still participating in the process, still contributing financially to the process, but being pissed while you're doing it. If that's not America, I don't know what is.
And then they bring you your Big Mac and you punch the Big Mac to death on the counter, but you pick it up and throw it away.
Yeah. God, I hate Amazon, but I'm going to buy a lot of crap from Amazon at this point. Like, I hate myself for doing this, but I'm going to keep doing it because it's fun for me. Woo! Sale.
I'll show them. The whole event was chronicled in daily newspapers and immortalized in political cartoons, often showing Kemble being beaten within an inch of his life or just pretty much losing his mind as the happy faces of patrons carried out their disruptions. And overall, though, other than being described as somewhat vulgar and obnoxious, the OPs really didn't cause too much violence.
Oh.
There were very few injuries and no destruction of property, just being loud and obnoxious in the theater.
Paying to be there. Therefore, they're not trespassing.
No.
They're just paying to be loud and obnoxious.
Right. Oh, and besides just being loud, singing along with the songs or over the songs, some OPs would bring their own musical instruments to play along. Now, these are generally pots and pans. They had some watchman's rattles. Do you know what that is? It's like it's kind of this big ratchet on a stick. It's like it kind of has a board with the apparatus, and you spin it around, and it makes that really loud cracking ratchet sound. Yeah. Uh-huh. So those were going off with the pots and pans and everybody screaming. They brought signs to wave in the audience and all had disparaging messages about Kemble and the NP or the new prices. Some OPs would engage in mock fights in the seats to distract the action on stage. Like they would choreograph fights or just improvise fake fights.
Right.
They would even run races and have tournaments during the performance.
Do you think there was any side betting happening?
I hope so.
I really want there to be.
I hope so.
The guy should have started to like be a bookie and take a cut.
Yeah. Oh, that must be what they made the coins for.
Oh, absolutely. And I believe DraftKings sponsored it, right?
DraftKings, your first place on betting for the OP races. Kemble did make efforts to appeal to the crowd in direct addresses a few more times. I don't know if this was a move thinking that he thought only the lower classes were starting this or they were the kind of progenitors of all of this. But he even hired famed clown Joseph Grimaldi to appear for a time as something as an appeal to the lowbrow audience members. Still didn't help.
No, because they've set it in motion. Like you didn't go there to see the guy. You go there to see the OPs. You go there to see the riots.
Right.
That's the riot has become the entertainment.
I mean, I can't even imagine that. Where just absolute loudness. It's like a freaking rock concert without the music. And then a clown strolls on stage and everybody goes, oh,
everybody be cool. This guy's going to do something cool. Not a chance.
I hear he does balloon animals. At some point in the whole affair, Kemble hired retired prize fighter Daniel Mendoza to act as something of a bouncer. Some nights, Mendoza would stroll on the stage and threaten to throw out unruly audience members, and occasionally it sounds like he did. But his attempts to quell the protest were actually quite incendiary, as he was formerly a people's champion, and thus a hero to the lower classes. So having him up there, working for the man, was an absolute affront to the whole class struggle side of this whole issue.
I bet that really calmed him down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. There's no way that would incite more riots.
And thus Mendoza completely fell out of favor with the public and was lampooned in political cartoons as well.
Yeah.
Yep. But hiring boxers didn't work out all that well for Kemble either. While very few arrests were made, one night, Kemble's doorkeeper arrested famed barrister Henry Clifford. Clifford then had the doorkeeper charged, and the doorkeeper was found guilty of false arrest.
That tracks.
Finally, in December, things were coming to a head for Kemble. And here's a longer clipping from an article, but here we go. Kemble had already dismissed the soprano Catalani a while ago, get that cost out of there.
Sure.
And on December 14th, 1809, he met with his opponents, including the aforementioned Henry Clifford, at the Crown and Anchor pub and agreed to restore the old prices in the pit, reduce the number of private boxes, and drop outstanding legal charges against the rioters. These measures alone were not enough. The next day, on December 15th, 1809, the audience demanded a formal apology from Kemble, who then came forward on stage to express his regrets. After he did so, and this is obviously a quote from something else, Mr. Kemble and the other performers in the progress of the play were greeted with applause, and everything went on most harmoniously. A placard was unfurled in the pits, inscribed with the words, "We are satisfied."
Wow. That's all it took?
Okay, we'll lower the prices. Sorry, I really fucked up. Thanks for coming every night.
I've apologized for so many things. I've given it away. I've given those apologies away. I could have gotten something for them. Now I'm mad. That's ridiculous.
But think about a sign was draped out. It says, "We are satisfied," meaning they brought that every night.
Somebody painted it.
And there's the one kid down there. He's like, "Oh, it's finally my chance." This is my gig in this whole thing.
I got it. 9.
I did it.
Sign boy.
Oh,
you've got consumption. Too bad. God, this time period is so chaotic. I love it.
Yeah.
It's just, it's supposed to be the age of reason.
Well, I think those prices were just unreasonable. So, you want to hear some epilogues on what happened? When Drury Lane reopened in 1812 after being rebuilt, the managers were smart to retain their original pricing structure.
You think? One guy says it in the meeting, "Hey, maybe we should raise our prices now that there's 2 theaters. Like, we need to be competitive." Shuts the door. The guy just said, "What are you doing? What are you doing?"
Or he announces it, and 8 people at the table all slowly take their glasses off, put them down.
Pour a drink.
They're like, "Jeffrey, we think you ought to go."
Jeffrey, it's time for you to find your happiness somewhere else.
It's not at the end of Drury Lane.
No.
Now, many in the British government took note of the OP riots and were fearful that such mobilization and organization could be brought to light on some more pressing current issues, such as an increase in unemployment, public dissatisfaction with the current war with France, and raising bread prices. But such public outcry never occurred. I love that they were like just biting their nails, like, that's going to happen. Nope. You raise theater ticket prices and they go bug fuck.
Yeah. This is 1801, 1805, right?
1809.
1809. Okay. It's very interesting because someone along the way figured it out. The Dickensian play, The Mystery of Edwin Drood, encourages audience shenanigans.
Mm-hmm.
Like it encourages it. It wants the audience to vote. It wants the audience to like be a part of it. So, and that takes place in 1870. I don't know if it's historically accurate, but it requires the audience.
Right.
So somebody somewhere was like, you know what we should do? Let's get these audience members involved
Mm-hmm.
and really make some money, because that seems to be something they like to do.
Well, I think that's about the time when like your Western melodramas started to get produced. And yeah, I mean, those are in saloons and music halls, and people are throwing peanuts and everything. You know?
That still takes place in Texas to this
Yep.
day. I mean, there's a whole Summer Mummers program that
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand, but the mounds of popcorn they have to sweep up after every production, because people are encouraged to throw popcorn at the bad guy. People are
Yeah.
encouraged to boo and hiss and throw things at the actors on stage. Yeah, I mean, it really is. People go there and they've made it.
Yeah.
They've made it. Once you get a popcorn bag shoved at your face, you're on your way, buddy.
Yeah. Now, the OP riots didn't really begin a discussion on the monopoly of spoken drama in England or how theater business practice should be conducted. That all came later. But here's a clipping from an article I found that I think was kind of interesting. The argument was that theater should be for everyone, yet the burden was to be carried by the owners of the theater, not just in providing the art, but also in keeping the admission prices low. The OP's campaign was successful in keeping the prices low in 1809, but it was less successful in the broader aim to keep theater accessible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it still doesn't, like, 1 shilling, I get it. It's a dip, but it's still, days pay.
Mm-hmm.
2 days pay.
But see, that's as far as it went. It was just like what we were talking about at the beginning when we started, when Colin Kaepernick takes a knee and people, God damn it, no! And they don't go,
Right.
Well, why? And they start to ask. Here you have the OPs going, I don't want my ticket prices to be higher. And nobody's talking about, they closed off more seating for the lowest ticket prices, and that's not fair. And why can only these 2 places do drama? This is stupid.
They missed the point of the entire protest, was this not being able to make it accessible.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
John Philip Kemble, once known as the greatest Shakespearean actor of the time, actually only second to his sister, Sarah Siddons, remained as manager of Covent Garden and last appeared on stage in 1817 in the title role of Coriolanus. He died in 1823.
Do you know what he died of? Consumption. Yeah.
Malaria. No!
No. Consumption.
A theater wall fell on him.
Oh, man. That poor guy. That poor guy. Like that's a lose-lose scenario. I mean, it's like being the president of a college. You're just going to get yelled at no matter what you do. So it doesn't matter. You might as well just figure out which ankle to grab, I guess, because you're just going to take it no matter what. Like, it's just not going to be, it's a lose-lose.
Uh-huh. And can you imagine, like, years later is like, hey, you're getting ready for Coriolanus, but hey, whatever happened with that OP riots thing? And he just sits there and just, let's not bring it up.
Do you think, because you're familiar with the play The Seagull, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is this what they were referencing? Because about the same time period. I mean, just these trite plays that have but really they're not talking about the plays, they're talking about the audiences.
They might have been. I'd have to go back, and it's been a while since I've really dived into The Seagull, but might be talking about a lot of the well-made plays and the romantic melodramas where they're like, 100%. This is fluff, this is stupid. It's just another CW hero show that has zero substance, and we have to believe that everybody in the world is impossibly pretty.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that.
In March 1856, during the gala reception for an illusionist who was hired to grace the stage for a number of nights, a fire broke out again at Covent Garden, and the building was burnt to the ground yet again.
Finally figured it. Nope, it's burning down. God, here we go again.
It was rebuilt in 1858, and in 1892, it became the Royal Opera House, which it is still to this day. The facade of the building pays homage to the second theater with the tall Greek columns, but they are not nearly as thick as the columns of Kemble's house.
Funny. God, everything burned down in that time period. Everything's just burning.
And that is the story of the Old Price Riots.
That is great. I mean, it's nonviolent protest, and at the same time, you know, they were appeased. It was very simple. It was very simple and very direct.
Right. 67 days of that nonsense, people putting money down, and they're like, hey, I think I might moon her when she does the out damn spot tonight. What do you think? Yeah.
So it's almost like the protesters were performing. And in a sense, they were looking for opportunities to be seen, to be heard, to be paid attention to. I mean, it was, you know, certainly, is that a new term? Is performative protest?
It might as well be. I was just having a conversation about this the other day. Like, you know, if you want to get huge corporations to actually understand human values and what they put their people through, then you're probably not going to get the best response by offering diplomacy and saying, let's sit down at a table and talk. You know,
No.
You've got to throw bricks through windows. You've got to set fire to things, or you just go, hey, big streaming houses, we are actors and we understand that you're considering using my image to make money time over time again, and I'm not going to get any compensation for that. How about we don't come to work now?
Yeah.
And it worked.
It did work. And that's something that, like, it's very interesting to think about that, where, God, there was an episode of Parks and Recreation where NBC would just reinsert old Seinfeld moments. Seinfeld would just appear in random NBC shows, and they would just cut him out of what was already licensed and insert him into television shows that he wasn't receiving any money for. Like, that's exactly the debate with Scarlett Johansson about using her voice for AI creation. I mean,
well, it was just similar to her voice. Let's be honest.
Sure. Luckily, there wasn't a really good movie about that starring Joaquin Phoenix that starred Scarlett Johansson.
And having her voice. And some CEO went, hey, I have an idea.
This is a new idea. No one's ever thought of this before.
No one's ever thought of it. It's been at least 10 years since that movie came out, right? You know how many people did see it?
The funny part is, I don't think we as a population have that ability anymore. I mean, really, it does bring you back to the sour-faced, I support the fast food restaurants because their prices in the last 12 years have increased 160%, but I'm hungry.
I'm hungry.
I have to eat.
I mean, it came up in that conversation. Like, I don't know, we figured out in the 60s and 70s to write some songs and have some concerts, and everybody got behind that. And they went, yeah, I don't like the way things are going. And it did have its successes, I'd say.
Yeah.
But I don't think, we'd get Jay-Z to come out and be like, all right, McDonald's, let's lower the prices.
No, not one bit. It really does remind me of when I did Newsies and we finished the read through, and I said, and everything was great. No more corporations took advantage of anybody after the Newsboys had that strike. And all the billionaires of the time period absolutely changed all of their prices to help economically. And like, that's the message of that show, is the people can take down the big man. It's like, it's just not a reality. Although I want to heckle more.
Yeah. I mean, the unfortunate side of Newsies is, like, you actually look into the history of that, and there were a lot of dead kids.
A lot of dead kids. There was a lot of violence.
Yeah. And it wasn't just dancing through the streets and going, we ain't delivering these papers no more. Like, no. The cobblestones were skulls. And
yeah. It was terrible. And it was always, we do a historical background of the newspapers would just hire thugs.
Yeah.
And they would pull them from the prisons and be like, you get your house, you get your board, and you've got to kill these kids.
Yep.
And they just didn't care.
Oh, if they could only mobilize like that in 1809. But
I think if the Newsies would have mooned more people, I think that would have changed the course of history as we know it.
And there was the one little newsboy who had his placard rolled up. He's like, is it time? Can I say we are satisfied? No, Charlie, just settle down.
He misspelled strike. It makes sense, because all those newsboys, when they were rioting and the inmates were told, they all died of consumption. Just the streets littered with consumption victims.
That's
I
unfortunate.
mean, brutally beaten consumption victims.
I think somebody should look into that. Like maybe there's a vaccine for it.
No, they're going to protest that. They're going to protest that vaccine. Don't do it.
Hey friends, this is your host Aaron Odom coming at you again. I want to thank you for listening to today's episode, and if you liked what you heard, please leave us a review wherever you pick this podcast up, or go ahead and like, share, subscribe, all the cool stuff you do with podcasts. We are Trident Theater, that's Theatre. You can find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or at our website, www.tridenttheater.com. Once again, this is Aaron Odom, and we try to get a new episode out every 2 weeks, so hope to see you again in a fortnight.
Apocalypse, I said, why you wanna show up now? Just when the heart of my life was getting good. I'll give you one more chance. Walk on out of the door, yeah. Get your ass to getting where the getting is good.